Getting names right in your fantasy campaign world building can be difficult. Consider this. I've got 3 lists of names here. And just listen to the lists of names. This is list 1. Meneldil, Kemendur, Erendil, Anadil, Osterher, Romendakil. Okay, that was list 1. List 2. Figueroa, Herodor, Menendez, Ezeta, Gutierrez, Romero, Escalon. And list 3. Einar, Gaiman, Aegon, Eris, Damien, Arian, Aegon. Okay? 3 lists of names. Now, I think if you look at the names in each of those 3 lists, intuitively, instinctively, you know those names belong together. If you take a name out of one list and put it in another one, it doesn't necessarily fit. So if you take, I don't know, Gutierrez out of list 2 and put it in list 3 with Einar, Gaiman, Aegon, etc., Einar, Gaiman, Aegon, Eris, Gutierrez, you can tell that one is wrong. Incidentally, the 3 lists, the first list was Kings of Gondor in Lord of the Rings. The second list was real-life dictators of El Salvador in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And the third list was some Game of Thrones, and it's the heads of House Targaryen between the Doom of Valyria and Aegon's conquest of Westeros. But those names all fit together. And sometimes when we need to produce a list of names or a bunch of NPCs or whatever for a particular environment or particular encounter, it's difficult to get names that sort of belong together. So what's a good trick to do to make sure that your names fit together? Well, I've got 2 ideas for you. The one is very simply a website called Fantasy Name Generator, link in the comments below, which has a whole bunch of different sets of names, and it'll produce random names over and over and over again from particular fantasy sets. If you want elf names, or if you want Sindarin names, or if you want real life names, if you want Eritrean names, if you want Igbo names, if you want Hungarian names, and so on. And you can do that, and I think it's fantastic. There's a second method, which is my method, which I've used in the past quite successfully, which isn't to say I don't use Fantasy Name Generator. I do. I tend to, I tend to go through many, many refreshes before I find a number of names that I like, but it is a good way of doing things. My second way is to find a list of real life names that belong together and change them a bit and pick out the ones that you like. So I'll give you an example from a campaign I ran in the past, which was set in the far east of Middle-earth in the Second Age. And for that campaign, I needed to produce a whole list of names of people who were the men of Erd, Erd being a non-canonical nation in the far east of Middle-earth, which I decided was ever so slightly vaguely Hungarian or Hunnish or Magyar-ish. Anyway, I had this vague idea for what the men of Erd were like. And so I thought, well, let's give them vaguely Hungarian-sounding names. Okay, so what I did was I basically went and looked at a list of Hungarian footballers from the Hungarian Golden Team of the 1950s. This was the dominant team in international football in the 1950s for a time. Basically, I looked at the team that thrashed England 6-3. And I picked out some names from there, and I changed them a bit. So if I give you the names that I picked, again, apologies to genuinely Hungarian people for if I pronounce these wrong, but I'm going to try. Jeno Brzanski, Gyula Laurent, József Zacharias, Laszlo Budai, Nandor Hikakuti, and most famous of all, of course, Ferenc Puskás. Now, you can't call a fantasy character Puskás without somebody obviously knowing who Puskás was in real life. For those non-football fans, Puskás was a very, very famous Hungarian footballer of the 1950s, played a lot for Real Madrid. The current FIFA competition for goal of the season is named after Ferenc Puskás. That's how good he was. So what I do is I take a name there and I change it. So let's start out. Our first name on that list was Jeno Brzanski. So you might think, okay, well, we only need one name for our fantasy characters. We're not using two names for these people. So I need one name. Let's ignore Yano. Let's take Buzansky. You think Buzansky sounds a bit, there are lots of people in the real world who have names like Buzansky. So let's take the ski off, and you're left with Buzan. Okay, that works. That's a fantasy name, Buzan. I don't know what you imagine Buzan is like, but he's our first name. Second name, Gyula Laurent. Now, actually, this was one I just liked Gyula as a name, so I just got rid of the Laurent and we used Gyula. And in fact, Gyula turned out to be a really, really popular NPC with my characters. He basically accompanied the PCs on a little expedition, and the PC, they were attacked by wolves. The PCs managed to roll really, really badly to the extent that they were in danger of dying, and Gyula, who was a much less powerful character, rolled really, really well and saved some lives. So he became a bit of a hero to the player characters, and I think they were genuinely upset when later on he gets killed by the bad guy. So Gyula was how we got Gyula from Gyula Laurent. Josef Zacharias. Let's get rid of the Yosef. It's too much like Joseph, which is obviously a very common modern name, but you get rid of Zacharias. How about Zacharian or Zacharian? That sounds like a good wizard name, do you think? Zacharian. Laszlo Budaj. Let's get rid of the Laszlo again. That's quite a common modern name, at least in Hungary, and change Budaj to Budal. Budal, yeah, that works. Budal. Nandor Hideguti. Another quite a famous player. Let's go to the Nandor. I think for one thing, if you were in Britain, you'd get jokes about chicken wings, which we don't want. Cheeky Nandos. So we're left with Hidek Guti. Let's get rid of the Guti and you're left with Hidek. I quite like Hidek. And in fact, Hidek again was an important NPC who became a player character. One of the player characters essentially adopted him, and he became a player character and joined the group. And then our legendary forward, Ferenc Puskás. Let's forget Puskás, because obviously that's far too famous, and we're left with Ferenc. Let's lose the ch off the end, and you're left with Theren. Yeah, and he became a king. He was King Theren, and that works. So our list, therefore, of names that we've got there. And I'm going to read this out essentially as list 4. See if you think these names belong together and work as a people from the same culture. Buzan, Gyula, Zacharian, Budal, Hidek, Theren. Now those names sound different, but they somehow sound like they belong together. And that's what you're trying to do when you come up with a bunch of NPCs from the same culture. Might be, people from the same village, or maybe orcs from the same tribe, or rulers of the same empire. I hope that helps.